Have you ever felt like you kind of missed out on parts of your childhood, not because of some big dramatic event, but because you just quietly outgrew it? Well, today we're diving into the psychology behind what happens to kids who had to become the adult in the room way too soon. So let's get into what that journey actually looks like.
This quote just really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's not about a sudden loss. It's this gradual, almost silent transition where the lightness of being a kid just gets slowly replaced by the weight of responsibility. It's a feeling that can be so hard to put into words, but for so many people, it's instantly recognizable.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to walk through this whole journey. We'll start with that unspoken moment of transition, then look at the psychological weight it creates. We'll explore the contradictions that build up inside, understand why just resting can feel so impossible, and then we'll end by reframing this whole experience, not as weakness, but as a story of incredible strength.
So, how does this whole thing even begin? Well, it almost never starts with a big announcement. It's a quiet, internal shift.
And this, right here, this is the absolute core of it. It's not a choice that's made out of a desire to be mature. Nope. It's a conclusion that's reached out of pure necessity. A child looks around, sees that there's a gap where a responsible adult should be, and they step in because, well, someone has to.
Taking on that much responsibility so young, it has a really profound effect on a developing mind. And psychology actually has a specific name for what happens when a child steps into this role. And that name is parentification. It's basically when a child becomes the emotional caretaker, the problem solver, or the mediator for their family. They're being asked to handle adult-level emotional stuff long before they actually have the tools to do it.
So how does a kid's brain even cope with that? Well, it adapts. To manage all the chaos, it learns to push its own needs and feelings way down. And this creates a child who, on the outside, looks incredibly mature, calm, and capable. But here's the thing. That strength isn't just a personality trait. It's a survival mechanism that was built because there was simply no other choice.
This adaptation process, it leads to this deep split on the inside. You end up with the person everyone sees, and then the person they actually are, which can feel like two totally different people living in the same body.
So, the first part of this split is something we can call survival independence. And this isn't the healthy kind of independence we all want. This is a kind of self-reliance that's born from learning really early on that you just can't count on anyone for consistent support.
And you see it show up in a few ways. You stop asking for help because you learned that it might not come. You stop expecting comfort. You just start handling everything yourself. And then, as an adult, it can be so hard to trust people because any support you get feels like it could disappear at any moment.
Now, the other side of this inner contradiction is split maturity. Because their emotional development was so rushed, some parts of them matured really, really fast, while other, more vulnerable parts, they just got left behind.
And this is where it gets so fascinating. Look at the contrast here. On the outside, you've got someone who seems wise, serious, super responsible. But on the inside, that same person might feel totally confused, full of guilt, and just emotionally unfulfilled. They're still carrying all the unmet needs of the kid they never really got to be.
Okay, so being in that constant state of high alert as a child literally rewires your nervous system. And as an adult, that creates a really weird paradox. The one thing you need the most, rest, can feel like the most dangerous thing in the world.
And this brings us to uneasy rest. Think about it. If your childhood taught you that the calm moments were just the quiet before the storm, then your brain actually learns to associate peace with danger.
So even when everything is perfectly fine, the nervous system is still on high alert, always scanning for the next problem. Doing nothing feels wrong, unproductive, even lazy. Your sense of self-worth gets all tangled up with being needed. And this isn't a character flaw. It's a chronic stress adaptation that you've been carrying since you were a kid.
This inability to just rest isn't only about scanning for external threats. It's also fueled by this really profound sense of guilt for having needs of your own.
The internal logic it's heartbreaking, really. It's, if my job was to be the caretaker, then me being cared for means I'm making someone else carry a burden. And so you start to minimize your own needs, you apologize for wanting help, and you feel deeply uncomfortable when someone tries to take care of you. It just feels foreign, not comforting at all.
And a final really fascinating trait is something we can call guarded empathy. These are people who are often incredibly empathetic, but it's an empathy that always comes with a shield up.
See, their emotional awareness got sharpened into a survival tool. They had to learn to anticipate problems and read moods just to stay safe. They can walk into a room and instantly get a read on the emotional temperature. But they also know the incredibly high price of caring without protecting themselves, so they stay emotionally guarded, even while they're tuning in to everybody else.
So, after going through all of these traits, it might be really easy to see this as a story of damage. But that's just not the full picture. The final and honestly most important step is to reframe this entire experience.
And this is what I really want you to take away from all of this. If this story is resonating with you, psychology does not see you as broken or flawed.
Instead, it recognizes that your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do. It adapted to survive an incredibly high-pressure environment. All of these traits are actually signs of a system that successfully figured out how to get through it.
You learned responsibility before you learned what it felt like to be truly safe. You learned strength long before you were ever allowed to learn softness. And healing isn't about becoming weak, it's about finally learning that it is safe and you are allowed to rest.
So, the final question is a personal one. If you grew up responsible for way more than a child ever should, just take a moment to ask yourself, are you still carrying that weight today?